My 3 little ones were all waving, 2 of them even jumping and shouting as I approached the gangplank. I acted surprised when I saw Steve and our children, putting my hands to my face and letting out a playful gasp. "What are you guys doing here?" "Surprise, Mommy," Steve said with a mysterious smile. "We thought we'd come down to see you off. Where's Edna?" I grinned at Steve. "I think she's already agreed. We figured it's better not to try to meet up in all this chaos." The kids were bursting with excitement, clamoring for my attention. They all talked at once, so I crouched down and hugged little Trixie. At 3 years old, she had just moved on from diapers, but still had the chubby arms and legs of a toddler. Like her older sister, she was a chatterbox, and her lisp was just too cute. "Are you going on that big boat?" she asked with her wide blue eyes. "Yes, I am." "What are you going to do on the big boat?" "Well, there's swimming, movies, a gym, and coffee shops, so I'll keep busy." "I want to go on a cruise with you, Mommy." "Well, not this one, but maybe we can go on a family cruise one day, okay?" "How long will you be away, Mommy?" Kathy had grown tall and thin, but she used to look just like Trixie. Like Trixie and Steve, her hair was almost white. We all loved being outside, and the summer sun would bleach their hair completely, while my dark hair would only lighten slightly with a few highlights. But my deep tan made up for it. "I'll be gone for 5 days and 4 nights, so I'll be back on Friday afternoon," I told her. Kathy's lower lip jutted out in a cute pout. I kissed her nose and reassured her, "No worries, sweetie. It'll go by so fast you won't even realize I was gone." "We're going to miss you, Mommy," said Charlie, my little guy. At 8, he looked just like me, but his serious, diligent personality was all Steve. I sometimes worried he didn't know how to have fun, but I knew he'd always be dependable. "I'll miss you too, but Daddy will be here with you. He'll take great care of you," I assured him. "I know," Charlie replied, "but we want you home too." "Oh, I just love you all so much," I said, pulling them into a big hug. Trixie and Kathy wriggled and giggled, while Charlie stayed perfectly still. "And I'll be back before you know it." I stood up and grabbed my rolling carry-on. My other suitcase was already on the ship. I turned to kiss Steve, but he was missing. I looked around and didn't see him anywhere. "Kids, have you seen your dad?" They glanced around, puzzled, but being short, they couldn't see much. I scanned the crowd quickly but couldn't spot him. Checking my watch, I realized I only had 5 minutes to board. I tried calling his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. He must be busy talking to someone. "Steve, where are you? I need to board the ship. Please come back fast." The kids looked worried, so I flashed them a reassuring smile. "I bet he just went to the bathroom. He'll be back soon. What are you guys planning to do with Daddy while I'm away?" "We're going to the pool," Trixie beamed, excited about the water in our neighborhood pool. "Daddy said we could have dinner at McDonald's one night." "Oh, really? Just make sure it's only one night, okay?" I joked with Kathy, who laughed and twirled around. "We're playing mini golf tomorrow night." "Think you'll beat Dad again, Charlie?" "I think he lets me win." His serious tone made my heart ache a bit. My little boy was maturing. "You still have to make your shots," I reminded him, echoing Steve's advice. "As long as you do your part, it doesn't matter what Dad does." Charlie gave a small smile, which made me feel a bit better. I hugged him and then stood back up to look for Steve. Just then, I noticed 2 crew members starting to remove the gangplank. Panicking, I ran over to them, making sure my kids were still in view. "Excuse me. I have my boarding pass, but my husband went to the restroom and hasn't returned. I can't leave my children. Could you please wait just a couple more minutes?" The younger crew member looked unsure and turned to his superior. "We can wait 1 more minute, but that's all we can do." "Thank you," I replied. I tried calling Steve again, but all I got was his voicemail. "Steve, I'm about to miss my boarding. Hurry up." I tried calling him once more, but again no answer. I shrugged at the crew. "I'm sure he'll be back any moment. He knows I need to board." "I'm sorry, ma'am. We have to depart now." Frustrated, I quickly texted, "Missed the boat." As I walked back to my kids, I called Steve once more. "Great, Steve, I missed the ship. I can't believe you'd leave me stuck here. You better have a good reason." I sadly watched as the ship pulled away. There goes my vacation. My phone vibrated with a text. "Oh no, what happened?" I quickly replied. Later, right now my kids needed me. I rounded them up and took them to sit on a shaded bench to wait for Steve. "Are you getting on the ship, Mommy?" "Not today, sweetheart." "Why not?" "Your daddy went off somewhere and I didn't want to leave you guys alone." I wasn't in the mood to cover for Steve right then. Lately, he'd been acting kind of rude. He'd been working late several nights, and even though he tried to pay attention to the kids, he seemed distant. When we were alone, he hardly spoke to me. Instead of spending time with us like he usually did in the evenings, he'd go to Tony's bar or work in the yard until it got dark. Plus, he was constantly checking his phone, more than usual. One morning I got curious and checked who he'd been texting, only to find out he'd put a password on his phone. Was he cheating on me? The idea scared me. But it couldn't be true, not Steve. He was so trustworthy. But something had changed. And now this nonsense. He knew how much I was looking forward to this cruise, a little break from the endless demands of being a mother, wife, employee, daughter, and all the other roles I played. 5 days of alone time didn't seem like too much to ask for, and when I mentioned the idea back in April, he was excited about it. But he orchestrated this surprise. Thankfully, Kathy wasn't good at keeping secrets, and then disappeared. I was more than a little upset with my husband. Where was he? We waited in the shade for nearly 30 minutes, and by then I had completely run out of things to keep them occupied. Trixie was getting cranky, and Kathy was right there with her. I tried calling Steve several times, but it always went to voicemail. My irritation went down, and my concern grew as the minutes ticked by. Where could he be? I didn't want to upset the kids, so I kept asking them questions and making up silly games. But even kids have their limits, and we had gone way past theirs. Getting them home was going to be tricky. An Uber had dropped me off, and I didn't know where Steve had parked his car. I checked my bag, but I didn't have his car keys anyway. I requested another Uber to take us home. We'd have to risk it without Trixie's car seat. But it wasn't a long ride. The driver didn't seem to mind, but I insisted we stick to surface streets. After waiting 10 minutes for the ride and another 15 for the drive, we arrived at our little rancher. I called Steve on the way. "Honey, please call me and let me know you're okay. I'm starting to worry. I'm taking the kids home, so head there as soon as you can." Steve's car wasn't in sight, but he might have parked it in the garage. If he was home, he wasn't. The kids were grumpy but calmer when I got them inside, and I put Trixie down for a nap. She usually only napped every other time, but I hoped today's excitement would tire her out more than usual. Kathy went straight to the TV and found a Disney show, while Charlie went to his room and shut the door. I brought my rolling bag into our bedroom and left it there while I went to the bathroom. I sent a text while I was on the toilet. "Sorry, Steve and kids showed up. He wandered off. Couldn't leave kids?" I finished up and flushed. "I understand," I replied with my own sad face emoji, then went to the kitchen to grab a snack and some iced tea. I didn't notice them at first, but when I sat at the table to ponder where my husband might have gone, my heart sank. Steve had placed his phone in its distinctive silver case right in the middle of the table. I knew it was Steve because it was perfectly lined up with the table's edges. He had an eye for detail and symmetry, which was essential for his job as a high-end painter. What shook me was his wedding ring, sitting on the phone's dark screen. Damn. I went to our bedroom and noticed most of his clothes were gone. His tablet was missing from the nightstand, and checking the den, I saw his laptop and all our files were gone too. It seemed like my marriage had ended. Tears streamed down my face, even though I knew it wouldn't change anything. But deep down, I knew I had deeply hurt Steve. He wasn't one to avoid a confrontation unless it would break him. And despite my mistakes, I loved him profoundly. Steve was an incredible man. He was an amazing lover and a reliable partner who put my needs before his throughout our 11 years together, 9 of them as husband and wife. He could be stubborn and overly focused on his work sometimes, but I still got my way most of the time. I could be impulsive and hot-tempered, but he was always calm and steady, which balanced me out. That was something I really needed, especially before we had children. He was exceptional at his craft. His painting business flourished because he combined creativity with responsibility, and now he had a waiting list thanks to the referrals from his satisfied clients. and he excelled as a father. He cherished each of our children, and while his patience wasn't infinite, it was close. And now he was gone. So why did I try to escape on a cruise with Chad Mayberry? I worked as a dental assistant because it allowed me to be home by 2 when the kids finished school or daycare. About 10 months ago, a new dentist joined our office. During this time, Trixie was going through her terrible 2s, and Kathy was adjusting to pre-kindergarten. Trixie was especially clingy, and while Charlie was more self-contained, he still required a lot of attention. It felt like the demands were never-ending. Steve's business wasn't all-consuming, but he often came home tired and distracted. He made an effort with the kids, but by the time they were in bed, he was exhausted, and so was I. We tried to make time for ourselves, but it was tough. Our once-a-month Saturday night dates felt insufficient. Friday night intimacy felt obligatory, and spontaneity was a thing of the past. Although we had worked hard to achieve our current life, it felt draining, and while I didn't blame Steve or the kids, I was frustrated with our lifestyle. I wasn't ready to settle into a completely predictable life like my parents. Chad was also married, but they didn't have kids. Their lifestyle seemed more independent, and since both of them had professional jobs, Sylvia worked in IT sales, they could afford frequent trips and exciting vacations. They often went on solo adventures. The first time I chatted with Chad was after he came back from rafting the Grand Canyon with his college buddies. Sylvia was headed to Santa Fe for an art show with her best friend. Chad had a great sense of humor and liked to tease everyone, including me. Since I usually skipped lunch due to my part-time schedule, he'd join me in the kitchen for a mid-morning snack. I often vented about my family, feeling like they took me for granted. I admired Chad's carefree lifestyle, extra cash, and fewer responsibilities. "Let's skip work tomorrow," he suggested with a grin. "We can drive to the beach for lunch and return in time for you to pick up the kids." So we did. It was a refreshing break from my usual routine. We had grown-up conversations without any obligations. I didn't have to repeat myself, and I only had to worry about cleaning up after myself. Chad drove, allowing me to relax, and the restaurant staff took care of us. I cherished the break, and that evening with my family felt like the best one in a long time. Steve noticed my happiness, and we had midweek intimacy for the first time in months. I felt so connected to him, nearly moved to tears by my love for him. Chad suggested meeting for lunch again a couple of weeks later, and it became a regular thing. Usually we grabbed a quick bite and chatted in the park, but on days when we had more time, we'd venture a bit farther. I can't blame Chad for seducing me. It was my choice to open that door. He may have walked through it, but we both played a part. One day at lunch, he brought up Steve. "I think I spend more time alone with you than I do with him. Wonder if he's missing me." "That'd be a shame." He glanced at my chest. "You've got quite the charm." I blushed. "Well, you've got your own allure." I smirked, raising an eyebrow, and just like that, the topic of closeness was out there. Our banter got more suggestive, and I began to see Chad in a different light. He had a refined handsomeness. Steve was more rugged, tall and muscular, with intense blue eyes and rough hands. Chad, on the other hand, was smaller, slender, and darker. I often watched his skilled hands during dental work, wondering what else they could do. We'd meet up for lunch once, sometimes twice a week, until one day we both had some free time due to canceled appointments. "Want to head to the beach?" he asked, grinning. "Sure thing." Instead of our usual spot, Chad drove us to a motel by the shore. "I've been wanting some alone time with you," he said, his eyes full of desire, and I felt a rush knowing he wanted me. We had about an hour and a half, which felt just right, not rushed. Surprisingly, I didn't feel guilty. Time with Chad was like a break from reality for me. It didn't affect my marriage, it just eased some stress. I loved Steve deeply. He was my partner for life. Chad was more like a gym session or a relaxing massage. We never scheduled our meetings, just let things happen naturally. For a couple of months, we'd see each other every few weeks, but then life got busy, and 6 weeks went by without any chances to meet up. That's when we started talking about taking a short cruise together. It seemed like a nice getaway for both of us. After putting the kids to bed, I brought up the cruise idea with Steve. Honey, Edna from work won a Caribbean cruise for two. She just split up with her boyfriend and invited me to join her. What do you think? When's it happening? In about 6 weeks, early June. And how long is it for? Chad and I hadn't discussed the details yet, so I guessed. I think it's a 5-day trip. I can double-check. That sounds like a great idea. You've been working really hard lately. I don't say it enough, but thank you for everything you do for our family. He hugged me tightly. In that moment, I felt incredibly lucky. I loved him deeply, so I led him to our bedroom and we made passionate love. When I was with Steve, I never thought about Chad. Steve was my reality. Chad was just a temporary distraction. Chad and I settled on June to give ourselves time to discuss it with our spouses. I chose Edna because Steve hadn't met her, while Chad said his friend Jeremy had won the cruise. Neither Steve nor Sylvia objected, but it seemed the 6-week wait was too long. I'm not sure how Steve found out, but his behavior changed shortly after, which made me wonder if he had orchestrated Kathy's almost revelation about the surprise cruise plan, forcing Chad and me to board separately. Now I found myself staring at Steve's phone and his wedding ring, feeling completely lost about what to do next. It seemed like I was heading towards single motherhood, leaving little time for anything other than taking care of the kids. If I thought life was tough before, it was likely to become even harder without a partner by my side. Damn. I took a deep breath and began making calls. I started with his brother, Paul. Hey, Paul, have you seen Steve today? Nope. Did he hesitate? Seem more reserved? Did he know something? Was he lying to me? I despised this uncertainty. All right, thanks. If he does reach out, please ask him to give me a call. I had similar conversations with his parents, although they wondered why I wasn't on the cruise, and then with his sister Beth and his cousin, along with 2 of his closest friends. While I sensed they might know something, their responses didn't deviate too much from our usual interactions, so I chalked it up to my own nerves. When the kids came looking for me, I switched gears into mom mode until dinner time. During another round of macaroni and cheese with baby carrots, apparently my kids had a thing for orange foods, Kathy piped up. Where's Daddy? He said he'd be home this week. Well, plans change, sweetie. I'm here now. But where's Daddy? He always comes home for dinner. Charlie, do you know where Daddy is? Charlie looked at me seriously and slowly shook his head. No. I believed him. Steve wouldn't want to worry the kids with something like that. I smiled and diverted their attention with questions about their summer camps, but inside, I was starting to panic. I pushed down my anxiety, cleaned up the kitchen, then got the girls into the bath. It was past 8 when Kathy and Trixie were tucked in, and I left Charlie reading in his room for another half hour until I returned to turn off his light. As I stared at his phone, I knew I couldn't reach him that way. So I composed an email on my computer and sent it to both his personal and work accounts. My dearest Steve, I've hurt you deeply, and I'm truly sorry. Despite everything, I love you and wish for a chance to prove it to you. Please come home. I need you, and if not for me, then for our children. They were upset you missed dinner tonight, and they'll only get more scared and worried the longer you're away. Please come back to your family. I love you, and only you. I stayed up late, hoping for a reply. Chad texted, but I brushed it off. Around 10, I forced myself to bed, knowing I needed to be alert for my kids in the morning. I prayed for some word from Steve, but nothing came. Instead, I received a heated phone call from my sister-in-law. "What the heck is going on with you?" she yelled when I picked up. What? What are you talking about? I mean, my brother may not always be the most organized, and he might forget half the stuff you ask for at the store because he refuses to write it down. But he's a good man. He's the best guy I know. So why are you messing around on him? I don't understand. What did he say to you? Steve didn't say anything to me. Paul had to bail him out of the drunk tank this morning. He was a mess. His lip was busted and his face was all scraped up. Paul thought he was still drunk. And he told Paul you didn't love him anymore because you were fooling around with a coworker. Crap. My heart shattered again for Steve. He wasn't much of a drinker, and when he did drink, he just got silly. Despite his size, he wasn't a fighter. He was gentle and always used words to solve problems. He'd never been in a fight before, not in all the years I'd known him, and there were no stories of fights from before then either. What had happened? What had I done? I have to find Steve. Is he with Paul? I don't know where he is, but goodness, how could you cheat on the kindest guy ever? I didn't have a response, so I said Trixie needed me and hung up. How could I betray Steve? The only explanation I could muster was that I wasn't betraying Steve. Not in my mind. My involvement with Chad had nothing to do with my marriage. I was deluding myself, I know, because a committed marriage requires full dedication all the time. No breaks, no getaways. It can be tiring, but that bond must remain unbroken, or else everything falls apart, and you end up with chaos all around and relatives cursing you out. It was crystal clear now that I had shattered the wonderful man I loved. I needed to find him, to try to mend some of this mess. I called Paul, but he didn't pick up. So I dialed his parents. I thought my conversation with his sister was tough, but I'd choose that 1,000,000 times over compared to speaking with Steve's mother. Hello? Hi, Margaret. Is Steve with you? All I heard was a sob, then silence. Margaret, are you all right? More silence. Are you there, Margaret? A trembling voice finally responded. I was thrilled when he met you. I thought you were the best thing for my son. He was so happy, but you turned out to be the worst. Shocked, I waited for her to continue, but it seemed she had said all she needed to as the call abruptly ended. If Trixie hadn't come in and asked me to tie a bow in her doll's dress, I might have broken down right then. But with my kids to care for, I forced a smile and we carried on through the day. My kids were innocent, and I knew I had to shield them from the truth for as long as possible. That proved to be another day. They were becoming more confused and upset about Steve's absence, so I had to explain to them that their dad was staying with his brother. I tried to assure them that he loved them very much, but that he and I had a disagreement and needed some time apart. They didn't like it at all, and Charlie seemed especially troubled. Is Daddy coming back home? Of course, sweetheart. We just need to sort some things out, but he loves you and your sisters so much he won't be away for long. Does he still love you? I hope so. I flashed a smile, masking how much his question hurt. Sometimes parents have disagreements, and we need to talk through them to be happy again. But even when we're upset with each other, we always love you. He nodded seriously and walked away. My heart shattered once more. With Steve's friends and especially his family rallying around him, my secret was completely exposed. He was hurt deeply, but I couldn't even get a clue about where he might be. His protectors stonewalled me when they didn't avoid my calls. No one provided any information about him. I left messages with the few who would talk to me, pleading for Steve to contact me or arrange to see the kids. I sent him 2 or 3 emails every day, begging for forgiveness, declaring my love, asking for any news about him, urging him to reach out to his children. I only let myself cry when the kids couldn't hear me, but then I sobbed uncontrollably. His abandonment pained me deeply, but what hurt the most was how much I had hurt him. We had been so perfect together, and now everything had changed irreversibly. 5 lives directly affected, and who knew how many others indirectly impacted. And it was all my fault. By Thursday night, my hope had vanished. I had run out of ideas, resigned to waiting for Steve to take the first step, wondering when I might hear from him, hoping it wouldn't be through legal channels. I went to bed that night feeling more sorrowful than ever. It seemed I had no advocate among the people supporting him, no one to advocate for understanding, patience, and fairness. I didn't expect absolution, but I hoped he might still have enough love to at least respond in some way. Even anger would be preferable to silence. But all I heard was silence. The phone rang on Friday afternoon, and my heart raced until I saw the caller ID. I almost ignored it, but since Steve left, I promised myself to face things head-on, even if they were unpleasant. Hey, Chad. Sylvia knows. I got served with divorce papers when I got off the ship today. Shit. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath to steady myself. Steve's gone. I have no idea where he might be. Damn. How did they find out? I don't know, but I think Steve found out shortly after I mentioned the cruise to him. He's been acting weird for weeks now, and the scene at the dock was a setup. He left me with the kids so I couldn't board the ship. And while I was waiting, he probably came home, packed, and left. Wow. I stayed quiet, breathing slowly. How are you holding up? Do you want me to come over? That's not a good idea, Chad. I'm not blaming you since I'm equally at fault, but if I never see you again, I'll be okay with that. We can keep it professional at work, but otherwise, please stay away from me. Seriously? Is that how you feel about me? I love my husband deeply. I don't know why I went with you, but it's cost me my future with Steve and my kids. I don't want a reminder of my mistakes. I understand. If you reconsider, just reach out. I don't turn away friends or even lovers. Goodbye, Chad. Lovers. Seems like everyone else saw us that way. But I never felt that for him, not even for a moment. My love was only for Steve. But Steve would never believe that again. The weekend was terrible. Steve was unreachable and the kids grew more upset. Trixie had 2 accidents Friday night, and Kathy had nightmares, so she slept with me on Saturday. Charlie stayed strong in the face of all the sadness, which made it even harder for me. I could feel his pain and confusion, and it wasn't hard to imagine Steve feeling the same. He had to be hurting, and I caused it. I wasn't just involved. I was the one who caused it. He was the man I promised to cherish, and I hurt him deeply, without even hesitating. I once read that everyone is the hero in their own story. I'm the exception. I've been incredibly cruel to the person who should matter most to me. Instead, I've shown that I only care about myself. I wish I could run away, to disappear where no one I know would ever find me. It wouldn't undo what I've done, but at least I wouldn't have to face the judgment I deserve every day. I couldn't avoid it. My kids needed me, no matter what was happening in my life. With Kathy snuggled next to me in our bed, I made a promise to myself. I'd be the best mom I could be, setting aside my own pain and regret to care for them. Maybe I wouldn't be Steve's wife much longer, but I'd be there for Charlie, Kathy, and little Trixie. On Sunday morning, despite feeling drained, I felt a newfound determination. I whipped up waffles, bacon, and orange juice for the kids, then settled them in front of the TV. After tidying up, I dialed Beth from the kitchen table. She was the only one from Steve's family who'd answer my calls, though it seemed like she just wanted another chance to curse me out. "What the heck do you want now?" she snapped. "Good morning, Beth. I need you to tell Steve to see his kids. They really need him. I know he doesn't want to see me, and that's tough, but I can handle it. However, his kids need him badly. He has to put aside his pain and reassure them that he loves them and that everything will be okay." "You're out of your mind. How can anything be okay after this?" I fought back tears and held myself together. Steve's not going to be okay for a while. I may never be okay either. But damn it, our kids have to be okay, and Steve has to step up to make sure they are. I wish I hadn't acted so recklessly, and I'll carry that guilt with me forever. But right now, I'm putting that aside to take care of Charlie, Kathy, and Trixie, and they need Steve to do the same. I don't expect him to forgive me, but they need him. Now, more than ever. "Screw you. He's been drunk since he left your place on Monday. You don't know what you've done to him." My heart sank. I knew exactly what I'd done to him. I understand. I wrecked our marriage and hurt my husband deeply. If I could fix it by ending my life, I would. But that won't solve anything. Nothing can fix what's broken between us, but we can still make things right for our kids. You, Paul, Margaret, and Richard need to support him in seeing that. I wish I could be the one to do it, to still be his partner and help him through this. But he's got to figure it out on his own, just like me. Our kids matter more than anything else. You have to help him realize that. There was a pause. Then she spoke in a softer tone. "I'll talk to Paul and the folks and see what they say." "Thank you, Beth. It might not seem like it, but I do love Steve. I regret what I did deeply. I can't even understand why I did it. But I did, and I have to live with that forever, knowing I hurt the man I love. I'm not the person I thought I was. You're not the person we thought you were either. Her words stung, but I didn't cry. I felt numb inside. I focused on caring for my children, which helped keep the feelings of self-pity and regret at bay. I gathered my kids in the family room and put on Encanto for them to watch again. After a trip to the park following a snack post movie, we returned home for a quick lunch of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, apple slices, and milk. I put Trixie down for a nap, set Kathy up with crayons and a coloring book, and found Charlie engrossed in his airplane book. With a moment of calm, I checked my phone. No calls or texts came through, but I knew what I needed to do. Hi, Mom. Is Dad there? Hi, dear. Yes, he's around here somewhere. What's up? I need to talk to both of you. Sure. I think he's outside. Let me find him. How are the kids? When are you and Steve bringing them over? That almost broke me. My determination wavered, but I held on. That's actually what I need to discuss. Oh, are you all right? I need to speak with you and Dad. Well, he's right here. They struggled for about 40 seconds to figure out how to turn on the speaker, but they stayed calm despite their repeated attempts. They were both relieved when they finally succeeded and praised each other for their capability. My parents deeply loved each other. I envied that bond. What's on your mind, dear? I took a deep breath. I need to tell you something. Steve has left. He found out about my affair. I'm not sure what comes next, but I thought you should know. There was silence on the other end. Are you in love with someone else? Mom asked. No, I said, holding back a sob. No, I love Steve. I love him deeply. I don't know why I strayed. More silence. Is there any chance you two can fix things? I don't think so. Steve left on Monday, and he hasn't responded to anything I've said. I have no idea where he is. His sister says he's crushed. He's been drinking all week. Oh, that poor man. My parents always adored Steve. I closed my eyes and steadied my breath. I pushed myself to continue. Yes, I know. I'll always regret hurting him like this. But I might need help with the kids for a while until we figure things out, whatever that may be. Of course, dear. Reach out anytime you need us, Dad said. The kids can stay with us whenever they need to, you too. A parent's love never fades, even in disappointment. I fought back tears. Thank you. I love you both very much. We love you too, dear. Tears streamed down my face for what felt like hours after I hung up the phone. The truth hit hard. I didn't deserve my parents, Steve, or my family. Yet here they were, all depending on me. I had to be strong for them. It was the only thing keeping me afloat. The idea that they might not love me anymore couldn't be my focus. I was needed, and that was enough to keep me going. Then the phone rang again. It was Beth. Steve wants to see the kids, she said without any preamble. Can you drop them off at our folks' place in an hour? Sure. Thank you, Beth. They miss him so much. I hope seeing the kids gives him something else to think about. He really needs something solid to hold on to. Right now, he's just falling apart. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I know he doesn't want me around, but if there's anything at all, you think I can do, just say the word. Despite everything, I still love him. I know I've lost my place in his life, but I'm here, ready to help in any way he needs, okay? The kids were thrilled to see Steve and excited to visit their grandparents' house. Kathy and Trixie ran ahead to the door, but Charlie hesitated. Aren't you coming inside? Not today. I have some errands to run, but I'll be back to get you in a couple hours, okay? He nodded, serious as always, and walked hesitantly up to the door where Steve's mom was waiting with open arms. She didn't even glance my way. I went back home and cried once more. The house felt suffocating yet desolate. Everything appeared smaller, compressed, devoid of significance. Family photos taunted me. They seemed ancient and stiff, relics of another era. They might as well have been sepia-toned. The furniture, the books, the DVDs and video games all resembled artifacts from a bygone time. It felt like I was touring my family's museum, observing history. I gathered my strength as best as I could before returning to pick up the kids. I barely recognized them. They were all subdued as Steve's mother led them out the door and toward my car, and they remained unusually quiet on the ride home. Once we were back, I prepared dinner. I cooked chicken stir-fry, baked some frozen fries, and sliced a red pepper and a few baby carrots. I adored my kids, but their culinary preferences were limited and focused on carbs. It would take some time before I'd challenge that. For now, they needed comfort. Nobody ate much. Charlie retreated to his room while I settled Kathy and Trixie in front of the TV so I could tidy up the kitchen. Just as I was finishing, I noticed Kathy standing in the doorway observing me. "Mommy?" "Yes, sweetie." "Why is Daddy so sad?" "What do you mean, Angel?" "He cried a lot. I think he was just happy to see you. Sometimes people cry when they're happy. You know he loves you very much." "I know. He said that too. But then he cried some more." I held my child, grappling once more with waves of regret. I had shattered Steve's world. My love for him was the foundation of the life he had built, and when that foundation crumbled, everything else came crashing down with it. He couldn't even control his emotions around his kids. I knew he would eventually heal, but to what extent was uncertain. I loved Steve. I was certain of that with every fiber of my being. And I had hurt him deeply. Perhaps I could mend him. I knew him better than he knew himself, but he wouldn't give me that opportunity. And I couldn't blame him for that either, but I couldn't stand to see him suffer. He didn't deserve it, and neither did my kids deserve a father who was hurting. My own father always taught me that when you break something, you fix it. So that's exactly what I needed to do. I couldn't make Steve the same man he was before my mistake, but I could certainly make him better than he was now, with or without his cooperation. I had two resources to work with. The first was our children. The other was my deep understanding of him. "Kids, you know how sad your dad is?" They all nodded. "Well, I have some ideas about how to cheer him up. Want to hear them?" Their enthusiasm almost brought tears to my eyes. They were incredible kids, and they adored their father. "What does your father love to do most?" "To tickle me," Trixie exclaimed, making us all laugh. "He enjoys watching videos with us," Kathy chimed in. "He loves ice cream," Trixie added. I smiled. Perhaps I needed to give them some guidance. "He really loves to go fishing," Charlie said quietly. "Yes, he loves each of you so much, and he loves going fishing. What else?" "He likes working in the garden," Charlie added again. "That's right. He enjoys all those things. Do you think he'd be happy if he could do some of those things with the people he loves most?" They all nodded eagerly, their eyes wide with excitement. "I think he'd really appreciate it if you guys offered to do some of his favorite things with him. Can you do that next time you see him?" "When is he coming home, Mommy?" "I don't know, Angel. But you'll see him at Poppy and Grammy's house again very soon. Now who wants to get in the bath first?" Once I got the girls in bed and Charlie reading in his room, I called Beth. "What do you want?" she said in a tired voice. "Haven't you done enough?" "I know what I did, Beth, and Steve didn't deserve any of it. But now he needs to prioritize our kids. They need him and he needs them too. We can help him start to heal, and that starts with him spending time with the children." "Why?" "Why what? Why are you doing this? You destroyed my brother and now you want to help him?" "I never meant to hurt him. Despite everything, I love Steve deeply. I've always loved him. I know we can't be together right now. Maybe not ever again. And that breaks my heart. But I know how we can heal, and I'll do my best to help with that, even if he never speaks to me again." I was surprised Beth had nothing to say, so I continued. "I want him to see the kids every day. It can be at your folks' house or here. Here would be best. I can leave while he's here. Actually, maybe we can share this house 1 week on, 1 week off. That way the kids stay in their familiar surroundings. The kids will help ground him, and their love will help him recover. He's going to divorce you." That was like a stab to my chest. I faltered, but I accepted it. I deserved it. "I thought so. And I will grieve about that for a very long time, but that doesn't change what we need to do to help him. Please, Beth, help me help him." "Fine, I'll encourage him to see the kids. I'll talk to Paul and our folks about your idea of sharing your house. It makes sense to me, but only if you aren't there when he is. I'll do anything short of giving up my kids. I don't want to hurt him any more than I already have." She hung up without another word, which I took as progress, given how likely that word would have been an F-bomb. The next day at work felt strange. I switched tasks with Edna so I wouldn't have to be near Chad. We were both on edge around each other, but to everyone else it seemed like business as usual. Edna asked me about the cruise, chuckling over Steve's mix-up about her accompanying me. He had contacted her for some gifts while I was away and mistakenly thought she was going on the trip with me. I forced a smile, hiding my inner turmoil, and explained that I ended up not going due to the kids. She praised Steve for being such a thoughtful husband, which only made me break down in tears when I was alone in the bathroom. I picked up the kids on my way home and got them settled. I knew I was relying too much on TV to keep the girls occupied, but I'd address that once things calmed down. Right now, I couldn't muster the energy for our usual games and activities. Our meals weren't elaborate, but I had been trying to introduce healthier options like adding pureed spinach to spaghetti sauce. Tonight, though, it was just frozen pizzas and apple slices. When Beth called, I took a deep breath before answering the phone. Steve mentioned he wants to see the kids. He thought it was a good idea for you two to split time in the house. I made it seem like my idea in case he ever talks to you again. It wouldn't have gone over well if he knew it was your suggestion. Thanks, Beth. I don't care about taking credit. Our priority is getting Steve, Charlie, Kathy, and Trixie together so they can heal as much as possible. When does he want to start? Tomorrow. Knowing he'll be the single parent for the kids for a week seemed to calm him down. He didn't have any alcohol today. He's still really sad, but focusing on the kids is helping him. I appreciate your help with this, Beth. Don't mention it. I mean it. Me too. If you ever bring it up to Steve, he'll be upset with me. I let out a bitter laugh. It was that or burst into tears again. This was a colossal mistake, wasn't it? I couldn't have ruined my family more if I tried. Beth was silent, but I could sense the tension in her voice. Finally, she spoke. Why? Why did this happen? I'm not sure. It felt like a break from reality. Chad was friendly and all, but I didn't have any real feelings for him. He wasn't particularly attractive to me. He just enjoyed being with me for who I am, not as a wife or a mom. It was like he appreciated my company. The physical part happened unexpectedly, but it wasn't passionate. It was just something we did for fun. I risked my marriage for what was essentially just hanging out at the gym. And going on a damn cruise. I have no idea what I was thinking. I mentally separated Chad from the rest of my life. Now, looking back, I'm repulsed by it. It's like it didn't happen to me, but it also feels like a surreal dream. And now I have to live with knowing I hurt the man I truly love for something that meant nothing to me. That's messed up. I know. There was silence again. He's been talking to a lawyer. You'll be served with divorce papers sometime this week. At work? Yeah. All right, I kind of saw that coming. This whole situation is messed up. I couldn't agree more. I mustered up my courage and informed everyone at work about Steve and me splitting up. I admitted that the problems were mostly my fault. Everyone seemed shocked, except Chad, who pretended to be surprised. I wanted to be the one to break the news before rumors spread, although I knew people would piece it together once they heard about Chad's own marital issues. It was awkward at first, but two of the dentists offered support, promising to adjust my work hours as needed. Their kindness encouraged others to show some support too. The divorce papers arrived on Thursday afternoon, and I took them to my parents' house where I was staying while Steve had the kids. Steve's demands in the petition were harsh, way harsh. He wanted the lion's share of our assets, the house, primary custody of all 3 kids, child support from me, no alimony from him, and for me to go back to my maiden name. I understood his anger and felt sorry for it once more. But his proposed settlement wasn't going to fly, for his sake as much as mine. I knew him well. Once he calmed down, he'd likely regret such a bitter agreement. Plus, if we wanted our kids to come out of this divorce as emotionally intact as possible, they needed to see us treating each other with kindness. During my meeting with my lawyer, I insisted on a fair proposal and made it clear I wasn't interested in a prolonged negotiation. I came to terms with the fact that my marriage was over. I understood that I had no right to demand anything from Steve. Though I wished to speak with him, we communicated through his attorney, agreeing that I would only engage if Steve requested it. However, he never did. I refrained from making any claims on his business, proposing an equal division of our remaining assets, shared use of the house on alternating weeks until our youngest child finished high school, joint custody of the kids, no child support from either of us, and no spousal support either. I was willing to keep his last name until our youngest graduated high school, but I'd reconsider if he still desired it then. My lawyer believed I could negotiate for more, but I stood my ground. While Steve's attorney made a couple of attempts to secure additional benefits for him, he knew I could push for more too. Eventually, we settled on the terms I had initially proposed. Living in our house without each other felt strange to me, but the kids, especially the girls, adjusted pretty quickly, which was the main goal. Charlie seemed more preoccupied than usual, so Steve and I, with Beth's help, decided to get him into therapy. He responded positively, and though he'd never be the life of the party, he did lighten up from being serious all the time back to his usual self before the divorce. Beth managed the weekly transitions smoothly, arriving half an hour early before we switched so one of us could be gone when the other arrived. Even though Steve didn't speak to me, he always took the high road with the kids. Well, almost always. He did take down every picture with me in it and turn them to face the wall in the den. I'd put them back up during my week, then take them down before returning to my parents' house. He never said anything negative about me to the children, and he made sure his family didn't either. I respected his boundaries. I owed him much more, but that's all he allowed me to do for him. I went full-time at the practice, and my parents picked up the kids and stayed until I got home during my week with them. It wasn't a complete life, but I had my children, my parents, and my job, all of which I enjoyed. I refused to date, and I had no clue if Steve was dating or not. I suspected he was. He thrived in relationships and was a great partner. The first time Steve spoke to me since that terrible day at the dock was at Kathy's school play. I waited until he and his parents chose their seats, then sat on the other side of the big room behind them so he wouldn't see me directly. Trixie was with me. Charlie was with a friend that evening. When she spotted her dad after the play, she dashed over to him. I followed a few steps behind and stopped a few feet away as he picked her up and blew a raspberry on her cheek, making her squeal with laughter. I smiled seeing their bond on display. His gaze quickly found me. He always did that when we were a couple, and he nodded at me. I smiled back at him. I still loved him, even though I knew we couldn't be together. We thought we'd take Kathy out for ice cream to celebrate her play. Can I drop her off later? I had the same idea, but I'd defer to him now. Sure, why not take Trixie too? He offered a half smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Thanks, we won't be long. I'll go let Kathy know and have her meet you in front of the stage. I need to grab her costume. She played a manta ray, and I thought she did a fantastic job. Okay. He turned with Trixie in his arms and walked with his parents toward the front of the stage. And that was it. I didn't feel any love, but I didn't sense any tension either. It seemed like he had moved past my betrayal. I felt both relieved and saddened. He would likely move on to someone else soon. I went to the classroom and found Kathy chatting excitedly with a couple of friends dressed as a lobster and a shark. You were amazing, sweetie. Mommy, I was so nervous. I bet, but you did great. Here, give me your costume. Dad is outside by the stage with Grammy and Poppy, and they're going to take you and Trixie out for ice cream. Yay! Are you coming too? Not tonight. I have to go home and clean up the kitchen. We had to leave in a hurry after dinner. I made sure Kathy got over to Steve and his parents. They made a big fuss over her, which made me smile. The kids looked like they were going to be fine. I felt a lump in my throat as I slipped away. There would be happiness ahead, for both Steve and me, but likely not together, and not nearly as much as I had sacrificed with my foolishness. I said a little prayer for Steve to find love again. He was the innocent one caught in this mess, and he deserved his happiness. But now, he had to find it on his own. And the same went for me.